Well, welcome back. Now, when you head to the polls on February the 25th, you'll need to make a choice between 18 political parties. And that's like having a multiple choice question with 18 options. Yeah, 18 of them. And you have to get it right. So, in continuation of our analysis of a candidate's policy plans and their grasp of what is at stake for us as a nation, we're joined on the program by Barrister Adewole, who is a presidential candidate of a Social Democratic Party, as a founder of Kaftan TV as well. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, you were in Kano to open your campaign HQ there, quite an edifice. And that's a state, incidentally, that your party, the SDP, barely had 700 votes the last time out. In fact, you had 635 votes. And the question will be, I mean, what's different this time around? If you had parties that had, you know, hundreds of thousands of votes, I mean, they might say they have a stake. But for your party, what would you say is different this time around?
Well, your analysis is short-circuited. This was also a state where we won at the presidential election in 1993. So, and you know the history that in recent election, our candidates were in court and we were not competitive. We didn't campaign. But if you go to Kano now, you will know that we are highly competitive in Kano. You go to all of the 44 local governments, people are supporting us, and we're working very hard. Kano is a place where you can always have electoral justice. You can be rewarded for what you do. If you walk the town, you talk to the people. Kano is not afraid to go with a lone ranger. Kano is not afraid to go with any person whose principles agree with the idea of helping the Talakawas, of eradicating poverty, of eradicating insecurity, of working with the people. Kano is independent, so we're doing very well in Kano, and we are having alliances and discussions in Kano. I doubt if any political party can defeat us in Kano the way we are now.
And I mean, we can hold you by those words eventually when the elections are conducted. And I mean, let's analyze what you hope to sell to the people then, since, I mean, you are quite confident about what will be your showing in the elections. Just yesterday, the World Bank says it will take the North 40 years to catch up with the South, considering the current growth rate. First, do you agree with that projection? I mean, you've been in Kano, you've been around the northern states. Do you agree with that?
Well, my aim is not for the North to catch up with the South. My aim is for the North and South to catch up with the 21st century. So even that analysis is not useful to us because even in the South, that has a comparative advantage. The South is also awash with poverty, underdevelopment, insecurity. So what I want to generally is to look at the North and let the North catch up with the rest of the world, not just catching up with the South. So the idea is not relativity of poverty. The North is poor, the South is poor. Maybe the North is a little poorer. So what we need to do is to make sure that we make investment in our people. Once we eradicate poverty across the country, it wouldn't matter whether you're in the North or in the South, the indices of poverty are the same, which is that people have no access to good food, people don't have no access to good housing, people have no access to good medical education, medical provision, people have no access to education, people are not given basic infrastructure to live in the 21st century, people don't have security of tenure in many things that they do in terms of employment, in terms of working on the street, in terms of being able to travel across the country. People don't have upward mobility. So once we invest in all of those things, whether you're in the North or you're in the South, I can guarantee you that an SDP government will be able to eradicate poverty in this country. And at that time, we'll have a new paradigm where now people are now being judged by the talent that they have. People are now being judged by their ability to be productive. So that's what we are trying to do. That was what we promised in 1993 in that book, Farewell to Poverty. And that's what we're promising now in Farewell to Poverty and Insecurity. And I know the North like the back of my hand. I was in Arewa House, and I think a majority of those in Arewa House thought that the SDP manifesto was the best, the SDP presentation was the best, and you can ask any of the leaders of the Arewa Joint Committee. So we are okay that people in the North understand us, and I also know that people in the North want to get out of the quagmire that they are in now, and people of Nigeria also want to do the same thing across the country. That is why you see some desperation on the part of the legacy parties try to see ways by which they can thwart people's effort, buying PVC, doing silly things, not allowing us to put billboards and notices everywhere. But people are responding, and I'm very happy that the message is clear, and there will be a lot of surprises in February 2023.
Well, it's quite interesting when you say, I mean, the SDP had those plans. Then for one, people will say there are different candidates now. That's a major difference between the SDP then and the SDP now. But also, it's quite interesting that you, describe that World Bank's report as irrelevant. It's actually the Nigeria Country Economic Memorandum, the CEM. And, part of the, some of the things said in that report is that it will take Nigeria about a decade to get back to per capita income level recorded. And it went back to 2000, saying that Nigeria was a rising star globally in the 2000s. But this fast growth was not accompanied by robust job creation. So tell us, in terms of your policy plans, what sort of projections do you have for Nigeria? If you say that you want, both regions, as it were, to even catch up beyond, the North and South dichotomy, what are your projections for Nigerians in terms of, the time, short, medium? We can leave long out of this, but short and medium plans, the indices you would like to show Nigerians as the job you're doing.
Okay, one thing is clear. You're right that the candidates are different. The only thing is that the candidate now is much improved. The candidate of 1993 was a perfect candidate for 1993. The candidate we have for 2023 is a perfect candidate for 2023 with modern knowledge, with an advancement. So all the good things that Chief MKO Abiola profiled in 1993, we've not forgotten any of them. What we have done is to improve on each of them to meet modern times. So we are better equipped now, and the evidence of what we predicted are now clearer to the people. That's number one. Number two, with respect to the World Bank document, not that it is completely useless in all its entirety, what I'm saying is that the comparative angle, perspective taken, is like having two hungry people on the ground, and you say, one is hungrier than the other. What sense does it make? They're both hungry. It's like having two sick people in a hospital bed and say one is sicker than the other. What does it matter? What you need is to heal both of them. That's the point I'm making. Now, with respect to short-term, medium-term, what we have is this. In this country today, all the assumptions that they're having is the assumption that we're going to continue with APC or PDP or any of those people who have held us down. That's the assumption. They are not assuming, they haven't taken into account that we might have a progressive government in 2023 that is going to enforce Chapter 2 of the Constitution, that is going to ensure that there is accountability in the management of the resources of the country. I've studied that document, and that document is a partial analysis. It doesn't state how we lost all our money. It doesn't state how we gave away money in the name of trying to pay our debt, and we gave too much money away, and we depleted our reserve. It hasn't said anything about how we are losing a substantial part of our revenue to the first world coming here to steal our crude oil and all of that. It hasn't said anything about the wastages and inefficiencies that are caused by an inefficient government. So what we're trying to do, therefore, is that the projection given to us is an assumption that everything goes as it is now, and this system is not sustainable. So what we have as a plan is that once we invest in items that are listed in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, we provide adequate nutrition for all Nigerians, we provide adequate medical care for all Nigerians, we provide adequate education for all Nigerians, we provide adequate housing for all Nigerians, and we promise in SDP to build 100,000 housing units in every state every year for the first 4 years. So once we do that, and all of those things will create employment, we had a 30 million job plan, which many say, oh, it's too ambitious. But we can see we've gone back 7 times to do the analysis. We've discovered that it is absolutely realistic and we can do that. And so once we do all those things, our Nigeria of the 2000 that they are saying is a yardstick is going to be less promising than the one we're having now. So I don't see anything wrong with our ability to catch up. It's the analysis of a man who is lying down. So another person, every other person is running. So you can expect that the gap will widen. But if the person stands up and runs as fast as they can, and they are very good runners, then they start to reduce the deficit between them and those in the vanguard. So what we are trying to do now is to appeal to Nigerians to take into consideration the fact that analysis by Bretton Woods institution, by international analysts, is on the assumption that Nigerians are going to vote the same people back again. It's on the assumption that the status quo, which is terrible, is going to continue. It's on the assumption that it may even get worse. And that is not the analysis you get when you study the manifesto of the SDP. People are assuming that the SDP, because we are not throwing money all over the place, we're not flying jets all over the place, that we are not campaigning. But we are your neighborhood, we're everywhere. People are responding. And we're getting a lot of partnerships. I just came in straight from Kano. I've been in Kano for 4 days. I couldn't even leave, except that I had other obligations elsewhere. People are eager to work with us. People came all the way from Katsina, Zamfara, all the rest of the Northwest.
So
and
you believe...
I've been talking to leaders, important people in the country, and they believe that we're making a headway. I believe that that analysis will not hold true for Nigeria.
So also, SDP. You think that you're the surprise package, that you'll spring a surprise in this coming election?
No, the surprise package is not me. The surprise package are the voters. Because they are assuming that the voters are dumb and that the hungry people in Kano are going to want to remain hungry for a long time. I was in Kano and I was seeing a live case of families who survive on going to dustbin to pick the back of watermelon, peeled watermelon, and they put salt in it and boil it and eat it. I've heard of families that are boiling water just so that children can cry and go to bed thinking that food is on the fire. So you think people are going to continue that kind of thing? It's not going to happen. So they will need us as much as we need them. I've been in Adamawa State, I've gone around, I've been in many states, and I said people are eager. People who are forming vigilantes in Katsina are going all over the place.
Well,
making sure that they make sure that these other parties will not come back to power.
There's this question I have to ask you.
For the elite.
Right. Pardon me.
Please.
There's this question I have to ask you. We have less than a minute to wind down. You've said that your administration will have zero tolerance for corruption. Now, we have laws. We have agencies for anti-corruption. What would your approach be? Is it to make the laws more stringent or make the agencies more brutal, so to speak?
No, it's to make the laws applicable to those in government. That is the problem. The government's job is to fight corruption inside the government. In Ahmadu Bello's time, in Awolowo's time, Okwara's time, there was no EFCC. They were not corrupt. So what I want us to understand is that you have to lead a power of personal example, and you have to make sure that the law is sufficiently applicable to those who are in government. There are two theaters for fighting corruption inside government. That one, you don't need the police, you don't need EFCC. The person who is heading the government has to be clean and has to fight the corruption by example. Secondly, the corruption on the street. That's what you need the police for.
Well,
so that is what we are going to do. And I don't need the EFCC. They are there, but I don't need them to fight.
Well, we have to anchor at this point.
And I don't need them for me not to be corrupt myself.
All right, we have to anchor at this point, but it's quite an interesting conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. We've been speaking with Barrister Adewole, who is a presidential candidate of the SDP. Thank you so much for your time on the program tonight.
Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.